Jim Wahlberg, and I'm a writer, director, and producer, as well as the author of the book, The Big Hustle. I want to thank you for this opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you today, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about my experience, strength, and hope. Growing up, I think many young people that I knew had families that were very supportive and accepting and loving towards them. My experience was just a little bit different. I don't think I got a lot of support or acceptance. I'm one of 9 children. I'm the middle child of 9 children. So I think I struggled a lot for attention. And I think my parents may have not been fully equipped to give us all the attention that we needed. Certainly, I think my dad, it was probably a little more difficult for him. My dad was an alcoholic. And so everything that he did in life revolved sort of around alcohol. He dealt with situations, whether he was happy, sad, angry, with alcohol. And so I think, I learned myself how to deal with certain situations. And not finding that love and acceptance at home, I searched for it outside the house. I searched for it really in all the wrong places. I started to hang around with older kids, trying to get them to like me, accept me, want to be around me. And so, I would act out. I would do things that would endear me to them. And the things that I would do to endear myself to them were always things that no young boy or girl should be doing. I was drinking, I was doing drugs, smoking cigarettes, I mean, you name it. I would get in trouble with them. I was at a very young age, these were not just older kids. These were older kids that were getting in trouble, that were living, a less than good life, if you will. And so I looked to them for this acceptance. I looked for them to this love. I wasn't able to look towards the Lord for this love or acceptance because I really didn't have a relationship or even an understanding of the love of Jesus Christ. And so, my life was very difficult and got even more difficult as my life progressed. The more I drank, the more I did drugs, the more I acted out, the more trouble I got, until at a very young age, I find myself committed to the Department of Youth Services. That means I'm a ward of the state. That means the state is calling the shots. They're deciding where I'm gonna live, where I'm gonna go to school, what I'm gonna eat, what I'm gonna wear. They're making all the decisions. They took all those choices away from my parents, and they became my parents. And things just spun out of control quickly. By the time I was 13 to 14 years old, I was homeless. I was in and out of jail. And I was constantly under the influence. I couldn't seem to get enough alcohol. I couldn't seem to get enough drugs. I couldn't seem to get in enough trouble. I was constantly in trouble. If anything happened in my neighborhood that seemed like somebody broke a window, somebody spray painted, somebody did something that was, some kind of damage, my name was always the first name to come up. And, what happens is that as a result of my behaviors, my reputation got worse. As a result of my reputation getting worse, the shame and the guilt and the feelings of less than got bigger. What I'd like to do right now, if it's okay, is I'd like to read just a little bit of my book and share some of my journey with you all. Every big moment in my life was pushing me towards God. Left to my own devices, I ran into nothing but trouble. But when I let God take over, my life changed. And one of his priests and one of his saints pointed that way for me. Here I was in prison again at 22 years old. No education, no hopes, staring into a 6 to 9 year prison sentence. If I messed up here, I would have to serve the whole sentence. I'd be 31 when I got out. I'd be a relic. I'd be one foot towards the grave. So what was I going to do? The big hustle, of course. I had to create an illusion that I was trying to change. If I didn't, I'd have to squander my entire youth. I had to shorten this sentence. I needed to give the appearance of being a good boy, a model prisoner, a young man bent on self-improvement. But it was all just a lie. I just wanted to get out of prison, to resume my criminal ways. But to create the illusion, I started going to self-help groups. I started to go to therapy, and I started to try to create an illusion. That's when Father Jim Freitas, one of the greatest men I have ever known, approached me. He didn't give me any hard sell. He just told me he had an opening in the chapel for a janitor, a handyman, a cleanup guy, to sweep the floors and empty the trash. Would I be interested? Well, why not? This was like the perfect hustle. The guy was a priest. I figured he'd probably be naive as a newborn baby. I could con him out of anything: cigarettes, food, access to the phone. Plus, I'd get to hide away from the crazy place in a quiet chapel. It would give me a chance to think, to be by myself. So sure, Father, why not? I took the job. Then a little later, Father Freitas drew me in. He said, "Hey, I need you to clean up after Mass Saturday night. Since you have to be here anyways, you might as well come to Mass." Slowly, week by week, he tried to bring me home to the faith that was mine by inheritance, but by which I knew less than zero. One day he told me that we were having a very special visitor to MCI Concord, the prison I was in. "Oh, that's great, Father," I said. "Who's coming?" He said, "Mother Teresa." I, a good Catholic boy, answered, "Who's Mother Teresa?" You see, I had no idea who she was. And at that point, you'd have to be living under a rock not to know who Mother Teresa was. The tiny Albanian nun founded the Missionaries of Charity, who had devoted her life caring and loving for the poor of Calcutta, India. She had won a Nobel Peace Prize and was probably the second most well-known Catholic in the world, behind only the Pope. A few years after her death, she was canonized and is now known as Saint Teresa of Calcutta. But to Jim Wahlberg, inmate number 44563 of MCI Concord, she was who? She would come in part due to an invitation from an inmate, a prisoner who had once been a Franciscan monk and who had written to ask her if she'd visit. "If it is God's will," she wrote to him, "I will be able to come to you." It was God's will. The day came for Mother Teresa to visit, June 4th, 1988. I saw her from a distance walking through the quad inside the medium security state prison with its imposing 40-foot walls that seemed to say, "You will never be free." Here's this little 70-year-old lady walking toward me, surrounded by these important people: the governor of the state of Massachusetts, the warden, the commissioner of the Department of Corrections. Mother Teresa was 5 feet tall if she stood on her tippy toes. Her moth-eaten sweater had holes in it, and her sandals looked like she'd been wearing them since the time of Christ. As she got closer, I could see her pockets were stuffed with money, as if people were trying to buy their way into heaven. It comes time for Mass, which is held in the MCI Concord Gymnasium. Thanks to Father Freitas, I'm walking in the procession. Me, Jim Wahlberg, the armed robber and breaker and enterer. Cardinal Bernard Law, Archbishop of Wahl, is presiding. He's wearing his mitred hat and sitting in his big fancy chair, and he beckons to Mother Teresa to come join him on the stage or the altar, as it were. But she shakes her head no, modestly refusing the offer. Instead, she stays with us, the inmates, the scariest people I have ever met in my life. We were on our knees, and she and her sisters from her order were there on their knees with us. Brothers and sisters before Christ. These guys are prisoners and rapists and murderers and bank robbers and drug dealers and the general scumbags like me. The scourge of the earth. Most people would consider us, and Mother Teresa stays with us and prays with us. For the first time in my life, I saw the face of Christ, the face of love. Mother Teresa knew that we weren't just inmates, prisoners, the wretched of the earth. We had names, we had stories, we had souls. When asked by the press why she had come, she responded, "You must find the face of God on the faces of these prisoners." You know, many people search through their life to find a defining moment, a moment that they can point to and say, this is the moment that changed my life, or this is the moment that most inspired me to live a different way or to improve the way I was living. You know, I look back on that moment, and you know, throughout my life, when I look back on it, many times I felt like God was calling me or pushing me or nudging me in a certain direction, but I continued to live as a broken person. I continued to live as a person unworthy of God's love. In my heart, that's the way I felt. And she changed all that for me. In that instant, in that moment, on her knees in that gymnasium with these people, with men like me who had broken many laws and had done many terrible things to many people, we had value, we had worth. To her, we were God's children. To her, we were God's children, and she wanted to make sure that we knew that. And it was a very, very profound moment. And looking back on it, I feel like for me, just for me, God was showing off. God sent like his #1 assistant to be in my presence and to tell me that God loves me and that God wants the best for me and that I need to give my life to Christ. And you know, after that event, I ran back to Father Freitas, this priest that I thought I would hustle, that I would con and manipulate to get the things that I wanted. And I said to him, "Father, I need to know more about God. I need to know more about my faith." And it was at that moment, that very next day, that we started to prepare for me to make my confirmation, which I did several years later while still in prison. You know, as I sit here and I think about all that I've gone through, all that I've been through, all that I suffered, all the suffering that I caused, it is so crystal clear and so apparent to me that nothing is too big for God. You see, only God can take all of my difficulties and all of my sin and all the terrible things that I've done, and he can use them and me as an asset to reach other people. People that my story has depth and weight with, right? That they know that I've been there, that I'm not a guy that learned it out of a book. And there's no offense to people that learn life out of a book, that's okay. But, you know, for me to be used as a tool for God, I had to suffer all that I had to suffer. And yeah, I'm so grateful, I'm so honored that he chose me, you know, that he chose me. I don't know, it's an honor to be here. I want to thank Good News Books for letting me be here, for letting me share just a little bit of my story. It's an honor to be able to have partnered with Our Sunday Visitor to write this book and to go on this journey and to re-examine my life and my relationship with Christ. And I thank you all, and God bless you, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.